Where is everybody?
Still at lunch. We're waiting for the bills. Yeah.
Well, the important people are here. Thank you so much. I hope you have been enjoying the forum so far. Get up here. My name is Pamela Brockhausen, and I'm your moderator. So I have a couple notes for you just about you need to check out by noon or you will be charged. Hopefully everyone's already checked out. Parking, they said, was supposed to be $5. It's actually 5 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, but you will be reimbursed. Just be sure to get your receipts. How many of you were here yesterday? I heard that there was trouble getting out of the parking lot, that it really took a long time. And so for those of you that can go pay for your parking now, then it will make it faster for all of us. So just bring your little, what do you call it, your little ticket up there, pay for it, keep your receipts, whether it's $5, $10, whatever it is, so you can get reimbursed. Okay, so forum materials are available on our website. If you would please silence all electronic devices, and if you do have to take a call, be sure to go outside of the room to take your call. Yeah, I used to teach classes and people would just answer in the middle of your class, so. If time permits, at the conclusion of the presentation, there will be a question and answer period. Now, you probably know that we're recording this so that you can listen to it afterwards. So if you have a question, put your hand in the air, wait for me to come with a microphone so you can ask your question, and it can be recorded. If you need to yell something out, then they'll just repeat it into the microphone. But we will have questions at the end. If you don't have enough time to get your questions answered, you can look at their contact information. Probably at the last slide, we'll have their contact information. And if you want CEUs, this one is eligible. So be sure to see the table out to the right of this door, and they made it really easy to get your CRC and CEU credits. All right, and with that, we invite you to sit back and relax and enjoy our session. I'm going to tell you the name of the session is Performance and Partnership Solutions that Restore Dignity, the MasterCard case study. And we have our presenters ready to go. If we could have a round of applause for them.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Good afternoon. My name is Bianca Cervantes. I'm the Communications Director at Borderplex, Workforce Solutions Borderplex in El Paso. Thank you all for joining us post-lunch. I know that I'm still trying to stay awake from that enchilada plate that I had over at Papacitos, but I do have a trick that I was confirming with Vanessa as far as why we get so sleepy after lunch. Your digestive system right now is in full force, and listening to us is going to be a challenge, but if you ever start to get sleepy, take a deep breath, hold it, and rub your belly clockwise. So I might be doing that during the presentation, forgive me. I'm here with Vanessa Preston from Grant Associates, who's our general contractor over at Workforce Solutions. So I'll give her an opportunity to speak a little bit about herself.
Let's see, is this working? Oh, good. Thanks, Bianca. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Preston. I'm an Executive Vice President with Grant Associates. We're a national workforce service provider that focuses on enabling better lives through bold insight, business solutions, and workforce development. And we're really enjoying our partnership with the Borderplex board and serving the great people of the greater El Paso Borderplex region.
Thank you. So our goal today is to inspire you with solutions that address a lot of what we deal with on a daily basis in terms of support services. And in this case, it's the implementation of financial solutions and, moreover, financial literacy solutions. We had kind of some issues when it came to implementing these programs. And what we discovered is there's magic in failure. So we do want to 100% show that we're vulnerable in certain times when it comes to implementing these support services, and we were able to find a solution and hope to pass that on to you so that you can implement that as well.
Yeah, all right, sure. For presentation purposes, Bianca and I are going to switch back and forth. It's a synchronized routine. You know, we're good at this.
It's also to keep us awake.
Yeah, 100%. So if you were to guess about like which do you think is the most stressful, show of hands, is it your family? Oh, I see a couple, yes. Finances. Oh, more hands, yes. Politics. It is wild times. Work. I see board staff in the room, yes. What about personal health? All right, yeah, so, we have, research shows that actually finances universally are the most stressful part of our lives. And so when we start thinking about our clients and the many difficulties and challenges that they face, compile that on top of it, we know that finances can be one of the areas of the highest stress in general life, and then even worse when you're working with income insecurity, food insecurity, things of that nature. So how do we make life easier, right? Between the board's initial pilot and now full implementation, we've been utilizing a MasterCard-based system to deliver support services to our clients that makes it easy for everyone, right? We know that Twist is not always easy. These last couple days it's been really challenging. But if we can reduce the burden for our clients, we can also reduce their related stress. So we think about our, is this in here? Yes. So our situation is that we had a really well-intended but sometimes not well-coordinated delivery of support services. There were times where clients needed cash right away, or there were only the only way to buy books for a course was through an online bookstore. There was even a time where we had to go and actually physically swipe a purchase card for someone to get gas. Right? This was completely unsustainable. It was not scalable, and it created many, many instances where clients had more of an inconvenience coming in rather than less of an inconvenience. Supportive services are meant to do what? Support, right? Not create additional burdens. So when we think about that, we had a system where they had to request it, it went through approval, coordination to actually get it to them, program staff was going all over the place, or ironically, in cases of transportation, clients had to come in and expend additional transportation funds, whether gas or bus, just to pick up this transportation support. You're like, that's backwards, right? We shouldn't be costing folks money to come in and pick up where we know they're already having a deficit and where they need more help. So when we went, and our CEO, Leila, had this vision after reading the Extreme Government Makeover book, which talked all about how can we, as well-meaning civil servants, how can we create more smooth government processes, right? How can we untangle the pipes?
Yeah, come
on up.
And Extreme Government Makeover was actually a homework assignment for every staff member at the board, and we highly recommend this book. It was written by somebody previously in government that recognized it's the inefficient processes and process layer, inefficiency layers upon inefficiency layers that are preventing the delivery of quality services. So it's not for lack of intention, good heart, compassion, and empathy. It's just the lack of systems, rusty pipes, tangled pipes, and knotted pipes. So highly recommend it. The book is, I don't remember the author, but can't see, it's too small. But Extreme Government Makeover is available on Amazon. Ken Miller. I should remember that. So what we were dealing with, as I mentioned, was the inefficient processes, but one of the issues, aside from the lack of smoothness, is that we were diminishing dignity in this situation. And that is what would prevent individuals from actually even coming. So although there was some drips of success, we were noticing that they weren't coming in because, just think, having to walk into a place, you're already going through something challenging. You're already dealing with some of the dignity issues of not being able to afford things for yourself, afford things for your family. So you're already on an energetic low. So to have to come in, be more vulnerable and ask for support and not know how to get support, and then have to go through the consumer journey process of endpoint after touch point after touch point, you're not really going to get very many people willingly coming in. So they end up going for survival and doing other things. And so it was a major threat to our support service objective. Our solution was to address the scarcity issue, the fear issue, and the efficiency issue by giving them autonomy established on a financial technology foundation. And this is how we ended up partnering with the MasterCard group. Our goal was to strengthen the pipes, and this MasterCard implementation was essentially the way that we would address support services, address the eligibility, and then give them a literal loadable card. So we call it the support services card, where rather than them having to go through those individual processes of walking in, hi, I can't afford to feed my family, okay, fill out this application and go through the countless questions that we have to go through for eligibility, the process of waiting, and then the process of actually collecting, which oftentimes it was a check, and that needed to be printed. And a lot of times these people had different variables preventing them from cashing that check, which was either transportation, identification, a lot of issues, a lot of barriers that were getting in the way. So what that did was that it provided complete independence, and we also, financial tech, got visibility on what these individuals were spending their money on. So this is just a snapshot of what we do now with this process, where it's assessing the situation, going through a more efficient eligibility process, loading the card, and sending them on their way. Now, I want to mention the inspiration behind this. Our CEO, Leila Melendez, who's over at TAB at the moment, was inspired by this situation that arose over in Los Angeles with the Angelinos. And it was the same concept, just at scale. And when I mean scale, I'm saying in the 30-something million, right, where they were actually doing the same process and assisting the community with individuals suffering with issues from COVID, whether it was medical, addressing housing expenses, food expenses, and this MasterCard program came in through the Angelinos where they were able to load that. So that was the inspiration. We didn't necessarily invent the process, but we adopted the process from the Angelino card. And they found out that through data and through the visibility from the financial tech aspect, they were able to see that the majority of this was spent on survival, foods, and groceries. So just the very basic hierarchy of needs from the very bottom. And once you get them past that, then they're able to sustain, and that's where our other support services come in. So let me talk a little bit about the pilot that we tried it on the very first time. So let's try it with youth, one of our hardest hit, one of the hardest to connect with, and also we want to address the scarcity issue from the root. Scarcity is a programming. The scarcity mindset is something that starts early on. So we did want to ensure that the next generation going into the workforce was going to be programmed with appropriate financial literacy. Our focus was to fund employment barriers, things like clothes, personal hygiene, phone, transportation, food, medical bills, the basics. A lot of them that we worked with were homeless or foster youth. And there was a little bit of apprehension from some of our own internal staff about what was going to be used with those cards. Things like they're going to spend it on PlayStations or games or clothes that is too expensive. Just that was the initial hesitation. And sure, you know, that they don't have this, they hadn't had experience with spending, so there was a little bit of that worry. Especially when it comes to scarcity. So I'll talk a little bit about scarcity mindset, where it's essentially a fork. It's a survival mode to start. Anybody that has dealt with financial trauma, particularly poverty in an early age, we need to make sure we survive. We've seen moms struggle. We've seen that there were days that we might not have had dinner. Different situations have created and connected a young child to the issue of survival at a really early age. So when that happens at an early age, psychologically, that is just what you will do forever. You can be making over $75,000 a year, and you will still see people living paycheck to paycheck, not because that they're not adequate in terms of funds. They just don't have, they are stuck in the financial scarcity mindset programming from an early age. So what happens with scarcity mindset from a psychological standpoint and fear and survival mode is that you can go one of two directions. You can be somebody that's scared to spend, so you have these very timid, I'm not spending, and sure, at the end that's the better option because you at least have money, but there's just the fear of spending, so it's not really spent, and you're still not living a quality of life because you're so scared to spend it. Or you take the route that the majority do, which is instant gratification, myopic spending, where it's like, let's get this out of the way, I have money, kind of when it's very primitive in the sense of animals where they see food and they eat it right away so that they can store everything and it turns into fat and they're able to survive for an extended period of time. Same situation with the spending and receiving a load of money. Spend it right away. And it may not be on the smartest things. It's going to be, let's go shopping, or let's get new clothes, or let's buy a car that we can't afford in credit. And on top of that, that starts to layer upon another psychological reward system. I don't want to say, it's a maladaptive reward system programming where you start to get spurts of dopamine with these spends. So you do get the immediate gratification while you're trying to survive. So that's where you end up with people making $75,000 plus a year, living paycheck to paycheck because they're either spending it on the wrong thing or trying to recover from debt. That is what we're trying to address with this MasterCard program and support system cards. Thankfully, when we did do the pilot with the foster youth, is we saw that they didn't go straight for the immediate gratification. There was occasionally one or two, but of the total that we saw, the majority, just like the Angelino program, went to groceries and food. Fast food, but better, more groceries than fast food. You saw expenses with convenience stores, dollar stores, which is another issue with the dollar store. You do end up spending more by shopping at the dollar store than buying in bulk. Transportation, electronics was the smallest, which is a good sign. Clothes was decently spent, and bills, utilities, things like that. So these were some of the challenges that we ran through. Well, these were some of the things that we addressed when it came to the MasterCard program. We knew that we wanted to implement this through all programs, but we also knew that even though the youth showed very good spending habits, that it was going to be a lot harder to tackle with adults who have been living a lifetime of scarcity. Financial literacy was another element that we needed to integrate into this program. There were some issues with spending where some merchants didn't actually allow the spending of use of that card, so we had a few hiccups when it came to unlocking it. So those were just some of the little things that we ran into. The good thing is that we were able to monitor this regularly, and we decided that we wanted to make this a family approach where we address the child, the youth, we address the parent, or any potential relatives in the program. We ended up distributing a total of 804 cards, 3,825 card loads within the program, and we delivered within an instant upon eligibility, so without having them to print a check or do anything of the sort. They were at home in their car, their funds were delivered instantly. So if they ran out of funds, say, and they were eligible for still continuous funding, they would just have to call us or email their career navigator and say, hey, I need gas, or hey, I need groceries. And they would look at their account and they would instantly load the card. So it was instant loading. We were able to account for 3,021 fewer trips to the office. So that's gas saved. That's time saved. Is somebody going to clap? I heard a clap. I'm just kidding. That's time saved, that's gas saved, and that's obviously a lot more quality time going into our staffing, internal staff being more efficient with their time, and the 755 hours in staff time saved. I think this was going to be something. Yeah. Sorry. Taking over. Go.
So the 800 cards that we're referring to, that was from just kind of when we went from the pilot with the youth to widespread implementation, which was But because we had to submit this a little early, that was like through March, right? So we continue to issue even more and more. We continue to be able to reload the funds and continue to save more trips to the office. But obviously, like, these are formula funds, right? You have to be thoughtful about how they're spent and where they go. And so some of the controls that we've put in place is limiting what's called MCC codes. So it's like merchant charge codes, I think is what MCC stands for. Essentially that, they can't be used at for alcohol, firearms, tobacco, things like that. You can't go to the water park. You can't use them at a hotel. You can't use them at a casino. So we're able to go through our partner agreement and just limit those codes. And so, we've had every now and then our vendor service provider calls us and they're like, we had someone come in and call in and complain that their card wasn't working. We look up at the transaction detail. We're like, yeah, like you can't swipe this at the water park. Sorry, like it's not going to work. There's nothing wrong with the card. It's working as planned, right? So that's one of the ways that we have controls to make sure that we're not going to get into trouble with like disallowed costs and things of that nature. Initially, we were waiting to give out the cards kind of once they were loaded. We realized, again, that's a waste of time. So looking for efficiencies, we distribute empty, like basically just pieces of plastic, right? They're nothing until they have funds added to them. That way the client does not have to return to the office once the cards are loaded, because it is less than a 24-hour turnaround time for it to go through like eligibility and QA, and then once you're through, you're good. It's instantaneous for future loads after that. But again, we want to reduce the burden on the client, reduce the number of times that they come back into the office. And again, we started this out with the youth, and the more user-friendly we can be, we know the more likely that they will continue to engage with us. And that's what one of the other aspects is, thinking about the customer service aspect of delivering support services. There is some limitations on the mobility of the funds, though, because these cards are considered a banking solution. They have some FCC regulations on them, right? So once we transfer the funds, if they were transferred legitimately, we can't take them back, right? We have transferred them. It's the same as if I handed you a 20. It's your 20 now, right? I can't take that back from you. So making sure that clients are spending down their funds before we load new funds is part of the ongoing conversation. Now it's like, what are you going to do with 31 cents, right? Probably not much. Like, okay, I'm going to load your next. I don't need you to always get to zero, but we coach our career navigators to double check and make sure that funds are being used kind of as expected as the client demonstrated their need, and going on from there. We do still occasionally have to issue checks, right, for rental assistance or things like that. So that process does exist, but it's so rare that we're using that, because almost anything can be swiped these days, right? It's the most accepted form of payment, and it gives us a really nice backup trail other than kind of the check. And again, because it's so instantaneous, checks are typically cut once a week, they're signed once a week. The lag for clients who are in an urgent crisis situation are just not served as well as they could be by instantaneously loading a card. And then the other thing we had to do was talk about client accountability, right? It's like, okay, your car needed this repair. I'm going to give you $400. You need to go fix your car, right? So having those conversations with clients, and we're very, very fortunate that we have only run into once or twice, literally once or twice, people misusing the funds. And that was an opportunity to have a conversation about kind of what does it mean, where does it go, and then we can kind of balance it out with future eligibility. But an important part of this was also that we had to give our staff the tools to talk about these things. So all of our team members have received training in financial empowerment. We use the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Money Smarts curriculum, and we have, within our corporate team, we have a financial empowerment coach that works with all of our staff members to make sure that they have the skills to discuss these things and incorporate it into all career services conversations, because it can't exist separate, right? It needs to be part of the overall conversation. Because overall, we believe that if a job seeker has an employment goal, they have a financial goal, right? There's these two. We work to earn compensation, to earn our quality of life, to take care of our families. So these two things cannot be separated out from each other. We have to talk about them together. We use this support service card as a tool, right? But the conversation and the coaching and the empowerment really happens in the transactions, in the ongoing conversations around need. So when we think about financial empowerment, it's defined as like a combination of, because there's a lot of words for it, right? Financial inclusion, financial education, financial health. Like, I don't know, a lot of us have perhaps when you sign into either like your bank account, it gives you your credit score or your own Credit Karma, right? Or all these things, making sure that our clients who oftentimes perhaps are not banked, right? How do we call them into this conversation so that they can create positive outcomes for themselves? Because in many places, credit score can be a consideration for employment, right? There are some states where that's been considered ineligible, but in many states, your credit score can affect your eligibility for employment. And so that's something that we, again, cannot separate these two goals. So our areas of focus for financial empowerment, of course, include banking, credit, debit, budget, and savings. We don't get into investing. We just focus on really the fundamentals to ensure that folks feel comfortable with what to do with their money. Once, especially if they've gone through a long time of scarcity, as Bianca talked about, what happens when you get that first paycheck? It's like, oh, I'm going to take care of my mom, and then I'm going to, pay off this debt, and I'm going to, well, hold on a second. All of a sudden it feels like they've got all this cash coming in the door, but really thinking about it slowly and giving them the tools to make choices that express their priorities, right? And a big part of our financial empowerment model is that, and training for our staff, which oftentimes is a tough thing to overcome, is that our priorities are not their priorities, right? We cannot impose our own value system on someone else, but we can give them the tools to reach their goals. And that's where we come in, showing them what are the financial products available to them, what are the ways that they can stretch their money to go farther. So a quick test here. We collected credit scores from over 2,000 of our TANF Choices customers. What do you think their average credit score was? Call it out. Heard 400. What else from the... This was one of the first interactions we have with our clients is that with our permission, we pull their credit score. It kind of gives us a baseline, and then oftentimes we can set goals with them around that for where would they want to go in order to achieve their financial goals. So kind of starting out, 450. I see 0. Yeah, many folks who are unbanked may not have a credit score. 600.
I feel like we need Price is Right background
We do
music.
need Price is Right. I know, Bob Barker is here. So the answer, the average credit score was 560, which, as we can say, is in the bad area. It's in the red area of our chart. So our goal is to help folks kind of move into the fair and good. But why is that important? You're saying, well, I have a crummy credit score. How is that going to hurt me? The thing is, it does materially hurt everyone, but especially our clients. So if we think about what does this mean for our job seekers, if you were to look at, I need a car, right? My car broke down, that repair didn't work out that we talked about. Average APR for a car, so this is from the 2022 Business Insider. If you have a credit score from 450 to 599, you're paying 19.87% for a new car, or 20.12% for a used car. Meanwhile, if we can just get above 600, it goes down to 14.3%. That's a substantial difference. So if you had a credit score of 560, each monthly payment would be $528, with a total interest of $11,700. But if you had a credit score of 730, you would be paying $422 a month, and you would only pay $5,300 in interest. So just by helping our clients bump up their credit scores, we are saving them $6,000 on their vehicle, which we know is a necessity, right? You need a vehicle to get around. When your vehicle is gone, or perhaps a family member, exits the family, is not part of the household anymore, what do? You need to participate in the auto loan industry now. It's not a commentary on loans, but this is a real material difference for our clients if we can help them increase their credit scores. So what we've done is that we've integrated financial coaching into our career services model. So this only happens, again, if we can get every staff member comfortable talking about money. Who's comfortable talking about money in here? Oh, yeah, I would say like less than 20%, right? Now imagine talking about money with a stranger. Yeah, it's really uncomfortable until you go through some basic coaching training that helps you understand that it doesn't, you come into it with a judgment-free attitude, right? You come into it with an area of curiosity. What is the person's priorities? How can I help them reach their goals? When you think about it in terms of kind of a goal achievement model, that's something that rings and really resonates with our career services staff. The idea of helping people achieve their goals, oh, yes, that's something we do every day. So we give them the skills and tools to be able to help them reach that. So that as they're reaching for their employment goals, they're simultaneously reaching their financial goals. One of the first steps is pulling a credit report, right? So there was a question asked, like, when do we pull their credit? Right up front. Of course, as with any service, clients have the opportunity to opt out. If they don't want to, no problem. We don't have to continue the conversation, but it's something that is automatically part of the conversation. We do ask them to complete a budget. Budgets oftentimes are aspirational, but it's a starting point, right? It's a conversation starter. We can help them by sending debt validations, opening a bank account, creating a savings plan. We know that check cashing services cost our clients an exorbitant amount of money. So if we can help them get connected with high road banking institutions, we're already putting more money back in their pockets. And then we're also providing additional resources. The CFPB, which I mentioned earlier, does provide free materials, like absolutely free. All you have to do is order them, and they just show up at your office. And they're really high quality materials. And of course, we are a VITA site. I know many workforce offices provide the tax preparation services, which, I mean, who paid to have, we just finished tax season. I won't ask you how much, but who paid to have your taxes prepared? Yeah. I wouldn't mind having saved that cash, actually. Yeah, so if just an idea, just a quick sample, like the CFPB materials, they have them both kind of in general adult materials, and they have many materials available in Spanish as well, and they have a whole curriculum that is targeted for young adults. So we are able to use them in multiple areas of our business in terms of doing the career counseling for our clients. And then the last thing that we have to think about is that so many of our team members, our staff, were our clients, right? So just because they got a job, all of the kind of barriers and burdens that came before don't go away. So what we've also done is we've gone ahead and invested in our staff. And so we've partnered with a national provider of financial literacy called Trust Plus. And they provide free, anonymous financial coaching to all members of our staff as well, so that they can benefit and create positive plans. And I think they had like a 4.9 star rating from all of our staff last year, and reduced staff debt by over $30,000 last year. So we're seeing our team members also take advantage, but it only is happening because we're making them comfortable with the conversation, right? And we're just incorporating it, normalizing it, and helping them set goals just the way we would set goals with any of our clients. Yeah, and so we saw a 25% increase in our staff understanding of their personal finances as they went through their boot camps. And then many have taken up the Trust Plus services. Again, it is completely anonymous, but we are lucky enough to get kind of aggregated reports every year of the usage, and we see more and more team members are able to purchase homes and reduce debt as a result of their participation. So I think we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for questions today, so that brings us to kind of the end here, and we will go to questions. So again, please, Pamela will come to you with the mic.
So I used to work for a nonprofit, and this would have been great. We had financial coaches and young people, and I totally understand the running around and trying to get checks and things like that. But one thing I guess, is around audits. So you're giving someone a card to spend pretty much to be responsible. So do you have like the actual purchases? Like what happens in an audit? Did it spend where it was supposed to spend? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. So we have within our policies, under a particular threshold, which all transportation is under that threshold, we don't require the receipts. And then any other spending, we do ask the clients to provide receipts to us. So if they're doing interview attire or car repairs or things like that, it's typically not an issue. We've been able to collect it.
Another thing with the codes is that throughout the implementation of this program, we've been able to fine-tune the coding where we do allow the swiping to happen. So there are certain stores that they try to go to that the card just won't work. So we try to implement a little bit of checks and some controls in that sense as well.
So I'll tell you, like, I was in our reporting system this morning for it, from the vendor that provides it, and there have been over 8,000 transactions at service stations or gas stations. They come under like 2 different MCC codes. So it's like 8,000 people have been able, or 8,000 times individuals have been able to get gas. Our next most common merchant is grocery stores. We had just under 900 grocery store transactions. Now we know not all, that report does a sum up, so I know not all programs permit spending on food, but because we have, you know, all different programming underneath, they are permitted to do that.
What is the average amount of money that goes on the card? What is the average amount of money that goes on the card, maybe on a monthly basis, and for how long?
Sure. So it does depend on which program they're in, but so the most common is getting $75 in transportation assistance, so gas assistance. Most people are receiving that either weekly or biweekly, depending upon which program they're participating in. And then there's $150 for work attire that individuals can receive. And then we see, you know, on case by case as needed, you know, based on demonstrated need, we would do either car repairs, utility assistance, and things like that. Typically, those are all under $200.
And this may be a very basic question, but which programs are you allowed to use the card as your service? You know, which programs are you allowed to use the card to load funds on?
We issue the cards for basically anyone who's eligible for receiving support services. So adult, dislocated, youth, SNAP, choices, NCP, because we're able to use it pretty much any way you would deliver funds to a client. We're using the cards to deliver those funds, whether it's support services and in some cases, like with NCP, incentives.
And I know you're a fan of data because you just did our workshop for us in El Paso. One of the most rewarding out of the fact that, aside from the dignity, restoring that for individuals, is that you heard Vanessa earlier mention that she got to see the 8,000 transactions that have yet to come. We're able to actually see from a zip code level, from a purchase level, from the types of where they're spending their money. So we take that data into the economic development initiative where we can start partnering and making it a whole different strategy and initiative with our economic development arm. So data from this program is so valuable. And I did want to mention our partnership with MasterCard. This isn't something that MasterCard just does. This was just something that was inspired by the Angelinos, and we just so happened to have a connection with someone from El Paso that was now working at MasterCard, and we took advantage of that partnership, that friendship, and it developed into what it did. So it's not the type of program you can just call MasterCard corporate and say, hey, I want the MasterCard program at the board. This is actually an organic program developed from scratch, and anybody wanting assistance or wanting support in the steps of getting there, it simply can get in touch with us. And we'll put you in connection with the right people.
And I think there was a question also around audits. I will mention that in the kind of back-end admin site for when we're loading up the cards. Of course, we have permission control, so everyone gets their own username. You can see who has access to what. Managers are responsible for doing the load authorizations, but any manager can load anything that's been approved, right? So you don't necessarily have to wait for just one person to say yes. But then also our fiscal team has full reporting capability, and then they're able to export results that go into our proprietary system that then matches by clients. So when we get a request from the team up at the board trying to, doing their due diligence, doing their audits, it's fairly simple for us to pull the report out, send it up. It comes as a CSV, so it's pretty easy to manipulate and kind of slice and dice to get information out of it.
So I have a follow-up kind of connected to the last two comments. Does the client, can they log into a system and see their expenses? And then is there a fee to MasterCard?
So no, they do have the ability to call in and check their balance, but they don't have an online banking platform with it. And we pay upfront a per card cost. It's like $2.95 a card. And then there's no ongoing fees to the client. And so for us, that's kind of the cost of doing business. It's certainly far more efficient when we look at the staff time savings.
That was $2.94 or $200.
Yeah, $2.95. And then we order them in bulk, like 1,000 at a time.
They look like a regular MasterCard too, so as far as the whole dignity aspect, they're just using a regular debit card that could be from any bank. Additionally, in consideration of the psychology of scarcity mindset, you remember how I mentioned that instant gratification is what really helps, what doesn't help them, but it gets them into the wrong direction. But we take advantage of the instant gratification dopamine reward system spurt within the parameters of controlled spending. So it's almost taking advantage of the existing habit that they can't change, but replacing that habit with the financial controls and good spending habits and learning how to budget with the coaching that Grant provides. So it's a brain hack.
So if for example, a TANF customer receives one of these cards, would that count as income towards their eligibility for TANF benefits?
No, it does not.
How do you get around that?
Because it's a work support, so it does not count toward their income.
So similarly, if a if a SNAP customer came in, meaning so they're receiving food stamps, and they have to get, E&T because of that, they could get this card and use it to buy food, so essentially like getting additional food benefits?
So the card, you're asking an interesting question. It is meant when the client is determined to have a need. The card is meant to provide support toward employment, right? So for most, that includes transportation assistance, interview attire, things of that. It's not earned income. It's not income. It's a programmatic support in order to meet the objectives of their either educational, if you're in WIOA, or in the case of SNAP. Well, yeah, actually, SNAP clients can be in school, so it could also be transportation to get back and forth to class as well. The SNAP client in this example potentially could go and swipe it for food that would be available to them, but it would be hard. We can see kind of where they're swiping it. It's like, well, I gave you transportation funds. You need to use these for transportation. But again, it's part of an ongoing conversation around kind of how are we applying what's your financial resources to the client.
Thank you.
This was actually a question that came up at the national level at NOB, and this response is specific to Texas, since we know how to do it in Texas, but in other states this may be considered income. But at least here we're able to use the correct language in the justification of the spend as it applies to programmatic work readiness.
Sorry if you mentioned this earlier, but how long has the program been implemented?
We went widespread. Grant Associates started in January 2022, so a little over a year. The pilot predated us, though. When was it?
That was done sometime in 2020. It was 2020, 2021 area during the time that it started and ended.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in regards to, I guess, like the timeline of how long the program has been implemented, how have you guys been finding in terms of adjusting the amounts loaded into the card for different programs in accordance with cost of living, transitioning into the workforce, you know, someone getting a new job that pays $40,000 a year versus 80. So,
Go ahead.
So, I mean, certainly last summer when gas prices were off the charts, we had program funding availability where we were able to update internal policies in coordination with the board to ensure that it was like allowable, but we updated from $50 a week to $75 a week to account for the increased cost for fuel. But it's a bit of a dial, right, with program of funding availability and just making sure that it's meeting a need for those that actually have a need. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have plenty of time if anybody wants to get your question in. It's good time. I think we go until 2. So.
So if you do have a situation where you need to have those conversations about, we gave you the money for this, but you spent it on that, do you then give them money for the thing that they didn't spend it on? Or is it like, well, you lost that opportunity. I can't give you money to repair your car because I already gave you money to repair your car?
That's right. Yes. So it is part, and also if there was a situation we can, because of the FCC rules, we can't ever recoup funds once they have been distributed, if distributed correctly. So like there are situations where it's like, oh no, I loaded Odette's card and I should have loaded Candlelight's. We can, through kind of back-end admin, move, you know, a whole $75 from one place to another. There's like certain like checks and balances that we have to demonstrate. So there is room for human error, but if we intended to give $75 and it was spent incorrectly, we can, essentially it can be deducted from future loads in order to balance out where the justified spending would be. Mm-hmm.
This is more of a comment and maybe for exploration. I know that if a customer has been eliminated from traditional banking because of usually choices they've made, that debit cards can be a way to reestablish a banking history. So it would just be interesting in the future. It sounds like you have a really good deal with MasterCard in place, but you know, could there be possibilities for other financial institutions later on? Surely if customers are putting their own money in cards, that sure complicates things, and so maybe that wouldn't be a good fit, but I think it is interesting to help also build that habit of a balance, that habit of banking, especially for customers who, again, traditional banking is not an option right now. So I think it's very innovative.
Yeah, that also brings up a point. Clients are not able to load their own funds onto these cards. It's only available for the funds that we load for them.
I was curious whether you had a credit score comparison at the end and how long it takes to impact credit scores.
Yes, I can't remember off the top of my head though. I'm
Approximately,
sorry.
Yeah.
I want to say it went up by about 40, like 38 to 40 points. I'll tell you.
So it does respond within a year, sounds like.
Yeah, and that's, so the number that I presented, the 2,000 clients with the average score of 560 is, for Grant Associates, we do provide workforce services around the country. So that's our TANF clients, like nationally. We also have TANF in DC and New York and things like that. And so we've been doing financial empowerment work with our public assistance populations since 2017. That was when we kind of took a look around and said, what do people really need beyond just employability? And we made the investment at that point to integrate it into all of our career services. So we have a bit of a history now. We've gotten a little bit of institutional knowledge on it and how to make it successful for our clients.
Great, a little bit of a running start, kind of. Who else?
You mentioned earlier that clients don't have access to their balance or any like transactional statements. I was wondering if it's like a logistics issue or it seems like it would be a good transition for them into the banking system, being aware of like their balance and like what they've spent their money on.
So they can call in and get their balance, but they don't have like what we would think of, you know how like you signed into your online banking and you kind of see the chart of all the places of in and outbound funds. That's not available with these cards. It's just not a feature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I agree, it would be great.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We still have half an hour for questions. Maybe they covered everything. Anything else you want to talk about, or they're going to start asking you questions?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Yep.
Well, thank you. And I mean, we've pretty much covered everything with the program. And if, like, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any guidance needed from anybody as far as learning how to implement it, who to get in touch with when it comes to getting the MasterCards, we're happy to assist. We have a working white paper that we plan to publish in the next couple of weeks that can assist with that as well. But just get our contact info down and we're happy to distribute. But thank you so much, and I hope we kept you awake or the belly rubbing continued throughout the presentation to keep you going. But I appreciate everybody's questions and insight.